And then finally, we've got to get into this conversation here because this is one that I find very interesting, and that is the reality of Aaron Rodgers staying in New York, but just maybe changing locker rooms. So Diana Rossini, after the Matthew Stafford news came out, put out this tweet, made it clear for everyone. The New York Giants are now shifting their interest to Aaron Rodgers. They've been discussing it all week in Indianapolis, per her sources. Now, what is the thought process on this? With the Giants, you have to look at Brian Daboll right now and the situation that he is currently in. It feels like the Maras gave him some leeway and also maybe took up some ownership in some of the recent failures of the Giants, with them opting to move on with Saquon Barkley and because of having to pay Daniel Jones, who it sounds like the Maras kind of forced on Daboll and Shane and just forcing them to work with this quarterback that they had because he did have that playoff appearance with them. Now, the idea here is that Daboll is still playing for his job this season in my eyes, and this is kind of the do or die season where they're giving him the keys to go find the quarterback he wants to work with, to try to show them this is what we could have been doing had you let me choose the items for the meal kind of deal. So if you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers, I mean, this has got to be a bridge type of situation, because I can only imagine that Rodgers is around for another couple of seasons at most. I know people were saying that 2 years ago, but I think at this current stage, after everything we've seen, 2 more years, maybe a third, but I'm really leaning on the 2-year thing this time around. Seems to be in the ballpark of where we're going to go. So with Rodgers claiming that he never wants another young quarterback to feel the way Brett Favre made him feel when he was in Green Bay, he could be the bridge guy. You could go and bring in Aaron Rodgers to help show a rookie quarterback kind of what it takes to be successful in this league, because no matter how you feel about Aaron Rodgers, he has been in the league for as long as he has. He has won a Super Bowl championship. He is a 4-time MVP winner at this point in his career, back-to-back MVP winner. That you don't do that by not being good. So he can at least provide that to a young quarterback, whether you enjoy his temperament and who he is as a person or not. We're just talking strictly quarterback right now. I would also assume that this means that if he's coming to New York, you're also bringing in Davante Adams, and that could pose a bit of an issue, and we kind of alluded to this earlier. If Davante Adams comes in to play alongside Aaron Rodgers, and we get into a similar situation, especially towards the tail end of the Jets season last year, we saw the frustration kind of stem from Garrett Wilson a little bit towards the end of the year, and a lot has been made of that since then. But we also saw Malik Neighbors make it loud and clear about how he felt about not getting the football enough during the tail end of the Giants season last year. If we get into a situation where the season's not going well, you have Aaron Rodgers once again just force-feeding Davante Adams, a guy that is no longer in his prime, having someone who is also no longer in his prime feeding him the football, you'd have to imagine that you're once again frustrating a young and very talented wide receiver, and maybe even making him question if this organization is even going in the right direction, and that just creates a whole other headache. So there is a piece of me that is a little bit cautious about bringing in Aaron Rodgers and then also bringing in Davante Adams, who he clearly is more than willing to feed the football to at this point because they're best friends, because I'm sure there's incentives and whatnot for them to hit. So that is definitely something worth at least juggling in the mind a bit. On top of that, I do have the question of just if this even makes any sense. And there is a big piece of me that wants to say no. You have to imagine that Aaron Rodgers wants to go somewhere he can win a championship next year. Like that, you'd have to imagine in an ideal world, wherever Aaron Rodgers goes, if he plays again next year, it's going to be with a team that he can go to and win a championship literally that year. Because I would assume he would love to win one more and then just call it a career. I feel like if Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl next year, even if you thought he had 2, maybe 3 years left in him, he probably calls it quits at the top of the mountain. Like that just seems like an Aaron Rodgers type thing. with that being said, you look at the Giants. Are they that close to winning a Super Bowl? No. I do kind of like what they're doing on defense. I like Malik Neighbors, but there is a lot of things that led to that team being 3-14, and it wasn't just not having a quarterback and also not having a guy like Davante Adams. Like, I don't know if a past his prime Aaron Rodgers and a past his prime Davante Adams is enough to push this team to a playoff appearance, let alone a Super Bowl run. And yeah, there is the argument of like, all right, well, Aaron Rodgers, him being who he is, could probably convince an extra free agent or three to come in and help bolster this roster a little bit more. And maybe Rodgers really helps Daboll unlock his offense and what it's supposed to be. And the big reason why he even got brought into New York as a head coach to begin with, because of his work with Josh Allen prior. But for me, I'm skeptical on all that. I don't really know how much pull Aaron Rodgers still has at this stage in his career. Like, I'm sure there's a few guys out there that would love to go play with him and maybe try to make a run, but in New York, I don't know. And then the last piece, and I kind of briefly danced on this, but I'll get into the weeds of it now, is, of course, Brian Daboll, like I said, kind of playing for his career at this, or not his career, but his job at this point in New York. Daboll going out and tying whether or not he gets to stay in New York beyond this next season to Aaron Rodgers is quite a dice roll in my eyes. And there is a bit of a safer option that you can go with if you can find a younger quarterback that you can make things happen with. There are guys like a Sam Darnold or guys in the draft like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders that if you're Brian Daboll, and the bar is low right now coming out of last season's 3-14 year, if you go in, draft a rookie quarterback, you develop him well, things look better than last year, and let's say the Giants finish the season at 7-9, or I'm not 7-9, I'm sorry, 7-10, 8-9, something along those lines. That's improvement off of last year and a step in the right direction. You can get away with going 7-10, 8-9 with a rookie quarterback and that being okay. You don't get fired from that because that's clear improvement. You're doubling your wins and then some. If it's with Aaron Rodgers and you go 7-10 or 8-9 and you chose to roll the dice on this, where, you know, you have to think about the money involved with this as well. You're telling the Maras, we got to pay Aaron Rodgers like $35, $40, $45 million a year, whatever that number ends up being. And then you also have to pay Davante Adams another $15 to $20 million a year for the next year or two, and you're saddling up nearly $70 to $80 million on this gamble here, and you get a 7-10 season, an 8-9 season. Sorry, Daboll, but that's not going to that's not keeping you in New York. Even like, and again, I know it's still improvement, but you're bringing in a guy like Rodgers and then ultimately a guy like Davante Adams to come along with him because you anticipate that you can lead this team on a playoff run. You don't do it to slightly improve the team by 3-4 wins and hope that your team looks better come season end. Like, no, he's coming in to chase a ring. Like, that's what you're bringing him in for, and I think that's the expectation you set, just like with the Jets. And look what happened when they didn't get that there. So, in my eyes, with all of this being said, do I think Aaron Rodgers ends up landing in New York? Probably not. This is one I could eat my words on, absolutely. But for me, I think Rodgers going to a legit contender, somebody who is somewhat a quarterback and some change away from actually winning a championship, makes some more sense. There are a few other options as well. I don't really know where that place is. It could be New York, but I feel like at that point, if he's going to New York, I don't really know if he's chasing a ring in New York. And Giants fans, this isn't meant to sound like I'm crapping on the Giants. I'm just trying to be realistic with what we saw from last year. I genuinely don't think the Giants are a quarterback and wide receiver, aging ones at that, away from being a playoff team, let alone a Super Bowl contending team. And I would rather see them go after a young quarterback and build towards the future as opposed to them trying to make something happen with guys that are on the tail end of their career. So maybe that's what's swaying my opinion on that one there. I want to see the Giants invest long-term, not short-term, because the short-term investment just doesn't look like it's going to pay out, and I don't want that for Giants fans again. So that's maybe swaying my opinion a little bit there, but I think Rodgers is probably better served going elsewhere rather than sticking in New York after what has left. And there's the whole, you could stick it to the Jets by doing well with the Giants. Yeah, sure, but there's a lot more that goes into it than just that, or at least I would hope there's more that goes into it than just that. That would be a silly reason to stick around in New York, is to just try to stick it to the Jets after the disaster that place is. You can't hold that against the Jets. The Jets are gonna Jets. That's what they do. Don't build the rest of your career around sticking it to them. That's my message to Aaron Rodgers, I guess.